There is a pretty good chance that if you are watching this video, you've been pummeled into submission by Blender at some point in your life. Squire, hand me that map. Here's the path the average Blender noob takes on the way to Mount Node. It's brutal out there. Blender is like the boss fight you just can't get past. And when you finally learn all of its moves, it goes to phase 2 and you have to learn a whole bunch of new actions. Shall we use the summoning finger? Ew, I'm not touching that thing. Hand me that finger. The thing about learning Blender is that it isn't just one cool program. It's like a bunch of different 3D apps in one. You can make 3D models. You can make 3D sculpts. You can make and render textures. You can make 3D rigged models. You can make 2D animations. You can make donuts. What was that? Anyway, learning all of these things at once is a lot. Too much, really. Journal entry. Blender, day 1. I made my way through the candy forest in search of the donut, an evil creature to be sure. Thousands have come here before me. I see their tracks. There are sprinkles everywhere. What happened here? I hear a growl up ahead. It's coming. Hand me the sphere. No, the cylinder. That's a cube. That's a plane. Delete, delete, delete. Why aren't they disappearing? The X button is delete in this program. Why would anybody do that? The donut tutorial didn't go well. It's the beginner's tutorial on the internet for Blender. So many people start there. I started there and, I failed. It's not Blender Guru's fault. The tutorial or the series of tutorials, they are great. It's me, it's my fault. I don't learn that way. Those videos are super in-depth and they cover pretty much everything. So many features. It goes through all of them. And the thing is, Blender is super reliant on the keyboard, shortcut keys. The mouse too, specifically a mouse with a track wheel. You can use a trackpad on a laptop, but it's a bit clunky. And where every art program in creation uses the space key to move around your canvas, here it's Shift. You want to copy something in Blender? It's Control-C, right? It's like that in every program. Nope, it's Shift-D for duplicate. And this goes on and on and on. Sometimes you hold Shift and then a letter for an action. Other times you have to hold Control and a letter to create a different action. And there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to which is used and when. I mean, there probably is, but to a noob, sure doesn't seem that way. So I went searching for a PDF online that I could print out that shows me all of the keyboard shortcuts for Blender. Something for reference. And good news, there's a bunch of them and they're nuts. Each one looks like a serial killer's murder board. I don't actually think Blender is trying to get anyone killed here. But it can happen. I would follow a video or two and then pick up the next day. And by then I had completely forgotten all of the shortcuts that we had gone over the day before. And if I went 3 or 4 days between lessons, good Lord, no way, I'm not coming back from that. I did so much backtracking and looping back on myself and rewatching videos over and over just to find the one shortcut or like, how did he do this? How come my bevel looks all funky? And after a few videos, I just gave up. Then a few months later, maybe a year later, I would get that itch to learn Blender again and boom, I'd start from scratch. So we meet again. And I would get pretty much the same results. So eventually, I carved out a week out of my schedule to just learn Blender. I'm lucky, I run a YouTube channel, I can do that. And so I spent the first 2 days just going through hardcore on that donut tutorial. Start to finish, no stopping, and I did it! I slayed the mighty beast! Next, our path led us to this small village on the outskirts of the forest. To this video by 3D Greenhorn. I made this nice little cute isometric room seat. It turned out pretty well. And I was on a roll. Into the creepy forest to make a little mushroom thing in a bottle. Another tutorial by 3D Greenhorn. This one was harder, you guys. I think I got too cocky there for a minute. But here is what I was learning. I said earlier that Blender is like 5 programs, maybe more in one. Well, the more features you add to any program or app, the more complicated it gets, the harder it is to use. I would start to get a feel for one part of it, like building something out, modeling something, and then boom, I go to this whole connecting node things to make a glass surface, and I'm completely lost again. It feels like a totally different program because in some ways it kind of is. It has its own rules and its own interface and everything. It's like ordering from McDonald's and they ask, do you want new tires with that? Wait, what? Why? Same thing happens when you go to sculpting or to animating. None of these are bad. They're all just a little bit different. So I decided, what if I just hardcore focus on my favorite parts of Blender? So I decided that if I just looked at the 3D modeling part and really wrapped my head around that first, without worrying about all that other stuff, then I could slowly learn the other parts of the program and bring them into my workflow. And so I did. Are we grinding again for experience today? You bet we are. I decided that I was going to focus on model, hitting Shift A, adding shapes, putting them together to make something, repeating that process over and over again. I was learning how to scale shapes, subdivide them, bend them to my will. I could make cars and buildings and trees. Still not good at dogs. I gotta work on dogs. But something else started to happen. I was having fun. Honest to goodness fun. This was a blast. Making things in Blender scratched the same itch I get from working on a Lego set or building something in Minecraft. It has been 3 years now, and even though looking through my art, you might think, he never uses Blender. When is he using Blender? See this office backdrop I use in these videos? It's Blender, or at least I use Blender to mock up the scenes, then I find some good angles that I think that look interesting, and then I use that instead of drawing something out with pencil is my base layer for my line art. So last year, I was playing around with a comic idea. Many of the backgrounds I used in that comic, those were created in Blender. This was especially awesome because I could build a little city block and then I could rotate it around, find fun angles, something that was like just a little bit unique. An angle or perspective I never would have drawn if I was just doing it by hand, just because it's so labor intensive. And all I was really doing was throwing blocks together in Blender to get some basic shapes and buildings and streets and cars together. Then I could take it into my drawing app like Photoshop or Procreate and just finish it up, get the colors in there, that line art. Some of those art techniques are the ones that I talk about in my Learn to Draw in 60 Days course over at bradsartschool.com. It was just a little promo, guys. But this is where it gets cool. I could do that step in Blender too. That's kind of where I'm going now. Remember, learn one thing at a time. I'm figuring out ways to use those rendering nodes to make my backgrounds look kind of cartoony. Sometimes they turn out well, sometimes they don't. It's experimental, I'm having fun. There's also Grease Pencil in Blender. This is a 2D animation app that is inside Blender. Honestly, calling it a 2D animation app is totally underselling it because you're drawing 2D lines in a 3D space, which opens up so many new possibilities. Yeah, so all of this is to say, I haven't learned everything about Blender. I haven't beaten all the bosses yet, but I've gotten a lot better at dodging. Okay, I've gotten a little better at dodging. Thank you guys for watching. I have another Blender video coming out on this channel. As I started writing this script, I realized it wasn't coming together and I thought, well, that's because I'm writing 2 scripts at once. My next video is me attempting to make the simplest Blender tutorial I possibly can. So if you've never touched the program before, I want to make it as simple as humanly possible. Also, shout out to everybody who has become a member of this channel. This is an experiment for me this year to see if I can like turn this channel into something. I'm trying to make a video or so a month. That's my goal. Hit the join button or follow the link in the description if you want to learn more about the memberships.